Welcome everyone. Today we are celebrating the Epiphany, and that word has to do with a flash of insight, or what some people call an aha experience. Now, I think it's important to repeat again that these scripture readings are here for one reason: to help us to live our lives with a little more joy and a little more meaning. And so the stories that are in the gospel have to be studied at a deeper level than just the story. And so I just want to review for you what the meaning of the story is at a deeper level. So, in the first reading in the Old Testament, it says that all nations will see the light. And in the gospel, we see these kings seeing this light. Now, we just had that convergence, and the scientists are telling us that convergence happened last time, the same year that St. Francis died, and it was the same convergence that happened at the time of the birth of Jesus. So when they saw this star, they had this experience: the Messiah is born. And so they followed a completely different lifestyle and moving to see this child that is not only human but also divine. And they come with gifts. Now, the youngest of the kings brings gold, which represents the material world. So in our youth, we think about the material things that are in the world, and that's where all of our values are. So that's Casper. Melchior is an older man, and he brings frankincense, which is a sign of a gift for a god. So he is thinking in terms of the spiritual side. And Balthazar is the oldest, and he brings myrrh, which is an application for a person's body after they've died. So these three kings represent three different aspects of our life. We carry both the human and the divine. And when we're young, we get all caught up in the material world, and we think that's the most important part of our life. Then, as you mature spiritually, all of a sudden there's a shift. And you begin to think more in terms of what's really important, and that's the spiritual side of our life. Love, peace, joy. Those are the non-material things that make our life meaningful. That causes a huge shift in our thought process. And as we move into the last stage of our life, we start preparing ourselves for death and begin to see it in a completely different way. We see it as the fulfillment of this life, being totally taken up with the spiritual and being transformed into a totally spiritual existence. And my dear friends, we all have these aha experience where all of a sudden we get further insight to make these transfers. And in the second reading, Paul is talking about that aha experience that he had when he was knocked off this horse and he had this experience of hearing the voice of Jesus. And Francis had exactly the same kind of experience. You know, he was born into a very affluent family. And then, when he heard the voice of Christ in a little chapel of San Damiano, after he had experienced war and illness, he had an aha experience when he embraced a leper and kissed that leper. And he made this huge shift in understanding that the most important part of his life was the spiritual side. And when he prepared himself for death, he spoke about death as bringing brother death, bringing him to fullness of life. You know, my dear friends, I think it's really important for you to reflect on this simple insight into the way our lives go and to ask yourself, where am I in this process? So my suggestion to you is that during the coming week, you take some time out and ask yourself, where am I in my spiritual growth? You know, some people say, well, I really am interested and involved in the spiritual life. Saying is different than being. And if you really want to find out where your values are, look at where you put your time. So I might suggest that during this coming week, just pay attention to where you put your time and make some notes. And at the end of the week, find out where you put your time. That's where you find out where your values are. These scripture quotes are always nudging you a little bit more into a more fulfilled approach to spiritual growth, and that brings on fullness in your life. Remember, you are all powerful spiritual beings, and the closer you get to understanding that truth, the deeper and more satisfying your life will become, moving you closer to understanding the death process and the total fulfillment that comes after that experience. Have a wonderful week, and God bless you all.